Thank you for joining us today for the Virtual Expo Showcase, The Future of ID Issuance in Higher Education. I'm John Ogle, Membership Engagement Manager for NACU. Joining me today from Entrust Datacard is Martin Hoff, Product Marketing Manager for Hardware, and Mike Galler, Associate Product Marketing Manager. Martin and Mike, it's great to have you here today. Welcome.
Thanks, John. We're excited to be here, and thank you to everyone for attending this session today. Normally we get to see everybody in person, but love the fact that NACU has given us a virtual option to meet with everyone. So we're excited to go through our presentation today, and we're excited that we're going to see you guys next year in person. So if you want to move to the next slide, Mike, what we're going to do is kind of break this up a little bit today. So we'll kind of first talk about the current state of higher ed and what's happening now. We'll go into what's happening with the identity issuance and kind of the market trends that we're seeing. We'll take a peek into the future of what's happening with identity issuance, and then I'll turn it over to Mike, and he'll walk through a couple of use cases as well as talk about security, because we know that's a big issue and top of mind with all of our customers across all markets, and especially in higher ed. So if you want to move to the next slide, Mike. First thing we want to do is just kind of talk about, COVID and what's happening with higher ed. We know there's a lot of things going on, from a macro level at your institutions. So we're not going to go through each one here, but just wanted to recognize that these things are really impacting what's happening to you guys on a day-to-day basis. And as you plan to the future with bringing students back, whether that's in an online model, whether that's in person, or whether that's some type of hybrid model. So we know those things are happening. We know there's a lot of implications that are out there, whether it's financial for endowments or scholarships or student aid. We know there's implications for travel and international students. So just kind of a lot of different things playing into that. And I think that just adds a layer of complexity to what's happening. But also we see it as an opportunity to, how do we operate in this type of environment? So if we move to the next slide, Mike, we'll go through, now we'll look at, what was happening kind of overall with, institutions of higher education. And now let's kind of get down to the level of what are those issues that you're facing as a card administrator, right? Some of these you've probably seen from us before. These are things that are out there that'll probably be out there regardless of what's happening, with the user experience and the long lines. And we know you guys are working to bust those lines. We know there's budget challenges that are even, heightened now with everything happening with COVID-19. We know there's branding initiatives that play into, the cards and IDs that you issue, and you want to make sure that that's something that's representative of your university. But I think the other thing that we really need to talk about that we haven't heard a lot about is really that drive to digital, right? We're starting to see that now. You're seeing the cloud software. That's becoming a bigger and bigger part of universities. We're also seeing mobile IDs, right? There's some great options out there with mobile IDs right now with Seaboard and Transact and others. So we know that's just another kind of issue that you guys are facing. So if we move to the next slide, Mike, what I'm going to do is just pause for a minute, because I know I tend to talk quite a bit, and just want to reach out to you and see what's the biggest issue you're facing at your university of those things that we just covered, right? Is it that drive to digital? I know a lot of people are looking to move to mobile. We hear a lot of talk about move to cloud. Is that a big issue? Is it the user experience, access control technology? And what you can do to help us out is just kind of respond into the chat right now, because I know everybody's muted, and as we're going through the presentation. So if you just want to go in there and let us know, what the biggest issue is facing you, that would be helpful, and get a good idea of what's really impacting you. I mean, there's different thoughts and ideas from people, but it's best when we, talk to you guys as the end users and of the products, what's the biggest issue you're facing. So let's move on to the next slide, Mike. So now that we've kind of looked at the current state of higher ed, let's take a look at, identity issuance and the market trends that are happening there. And really, when we talk about that, is kind of that space we play in with the IDs that are, issued, whether it's a physical or mobile credential, right? So the first thing that we're seeing from a trend perspective is really that shift from on-premise to cloud. And we see this across campuses, right? It's not just in the card office. It's a survey that, we were researching. We found that 62% of higher ed apps are going to be cloud-based by 2021. So that's not 3 or 5 or 10 years down the road. That's just right around the corner. And we'll see that number continue to climb over the years as we see that kind of drive to digital and a smart campus architecture being built out. And it's interesting because it's not always the same reasons for moving to the cloud that you see in other industries. Part of it is really, instead of cost savings, it's being really more cost efficient. Really gives you that flexibility when you have a cloud-based software. And then you can also avoid all those additional hardware costs, doing those manual software updates on your own. You can get the automatic software updates. So a lot of benefits of moving to the cloud, and we're starting to see that shift within the university space. So if we go to the next slide, I kind of talked about this before, but I mean, this is real. I mean, we're seeing that, what we like to call the convergence of physical and digital, right? Like I said, we've seen great partners like Transact and Seaboard and others already come out with a mobile credential. So we know that's a real thing. That's not a future thing. We're seeing more and more people move that way. We're also still seeing a need for a physical credential. So while we got this great technology, we see those use cases with the physical card, right? Whether it's students or administration that, don't have a mobile phone or don't want to use an ID in a mobile phone. Maybe they also want a physical card instead, even though they have a mobile phone. You also see temporary cards. So you see kind of different use cases. And really, we don't see one or the other. We see these kind of coexisting with each other. And so when you think about it, you really want a solution that can provide you both, right? Something that you can issue a physical ID and a card, and as well as a mobile ID. And that's really kind of where we see the market heading. So if we move to the next slide, I'll take a pause again because, we like to just kind of break things up here so people aren't talking all the time and presenting, but just want to see where everybody is with mobile IDs, because I know this is one of the biggest topics that we see, within this space. Is it, and like I said, you can just respond to the chat. Is this something that you have already? Is this something where you're looking to move within the next 12 or 24 or 36 months? Or I know there's also, some challenges with securing funding, especially if there's older technologies like MegStripe that's being used. That's a big cost to upgrade the infrastructure to get ready for mobile ID. So just curious kind of where everybody sits with that. And like I said, you can just respond in the chat with where you are with that one. So let's go on the next slide, Mike. So not only do you see that kind of convergence between, mobile and physical, we're also seeing, if we could go back, Mike, I know we get a little trigger happy here. You really see that mobile first kind of mentality, right? I know when I started working at a mobile phone provider many moons ago, and I'm starting to show my age, mobile phones were considered the third screen, right? Like that was, after your TV and your computer, those were the primary screens, and then the mobile phone was the third screen. And that's really not the case now, right? Like everything you do is on your mobile phone. I do all my banking, I get my boarding pass on a mobile phone, I go to the gym and I use my mobile phone to check in. So we're seeing really kind of that whole shift to a mobile first mentality, not only from students, but you also see it across, the institution with professors, administration, and even people working in the card office. And the beautiful part about mobile is it's not just something you use for ID, but you can actually use for part of your enrollment and issuance process. So, traditionally we've set up workstations and people have come in and taken the picture and administered the card, but now with having mobile capabilities through, our True Credential product, you can set up workstations across the campus where you can capture people's pictures, and then you can send it back to the card office to print it out. So you can use that mobile, whether it's a phone or a tablet, to enroll students, and then you can issue the ID cards either back at the office, or we see in some universities take their printer with them into different buildings, or if they have multiple campuses, bring them to different campuses to be able to issue ID cards. So really kind of giving that flexibility when you have that mobile first mentality to enrollment and issuance. Another thing that we see, that's huge and has been kind of, bubbling up for a while in this space is the online photo submission, right? I know there's a lot of institutions that are doing that right now, and we understand that, right? There's the traditional enrollment. There's a lot of pain points there, right? It can be slow, it can be inefficient. You get those long lines, and like we were showing earlier, you end up getting a really poor user experience for those students that don't want to wait in line a long time just to get their ID. So we have integration with CloudCard, and you may have seen their presentation a couple weeks ago here on NACU. But the best part about it is that you can really minimize those face-to-face interactions, right? And you can remotely submit photos for ID cards. So that's something that is new with us and with CloudCard. And it really helps out, especially if you're going to move to a different kind of learning model, and students may not be in person right away, or you want to minimize that interaction with them due to what's happening in the world right now. So again, that's just another kind of trend that we see happening, and we're really excited about the work that we're doing together with CloudCard in that space. So we'll stop again and pause for a minute, so we're not just talking the entire time, but is this something that you guys are using already? We'll just put a question out to see what type of response we get here. And like I said before, just put your response in the chat. Is this something you're using? Is this something now that you're going to move to? And I know there's more interest with the current situation, or there's also institutions where they don't see a need for it. So just kind of trying to understand where everybody is with that, because we know online photo submission is another one of those kind of key market trends that are happening in the marketplace right now. What we see happening with identity issuance is we see it really being easy in the future, right? And we talk about it easy in every way. So whether you're setting up the system, issuing the IDs, you're managing the system, let's be honest, us and all our competition haven't always made it the easiest thing to do, right? If we're going to be brutally honest with everyone. But we see that being kind of a cornerstone of the future to make sure that this is a better experience for the people that are using the products. And part of it's driven by that mobile piece, right, that we just talked about with the mobile enrollment and issuance. It gives you that flexibility to capture photos wherever you want. You can enroll students. You can issue ID cards in different locations. You can kind of break that traditional mode of we got to set up in the card office and this is the only place that we can do that. It gives you a lot more flexibility to be dynamic and respond to different events and different ways that you can issue ID cards across the campus. Not only do we see it being easy, but we see it being intelligent, right? We talked about it before, but really now with that kind of convergence of mobile and physical IDs coming together, you see that experience just being even better for you guys. So you can send an ID to a printer and mobile device at the same time. You don't have to worry about, okay, I'm going to send it to the printer. Now I got to set it up and send it to the mobile mobile device as well. You don't run into it because it just does it right away at the same time. We're also, going to see things like, voice integration and get an Alexa-like experience with your minor things that come up that you need to address with the ID issuance system, or you want to check and see how many cards are left, or you want to run a cleaning card, or see how many cards have been run until you need to do another cleaning cycle. You'll be able in the future to be able to do voice commands with those things instead of having to kind of hunt and peck all over the LCD screen, which isn't easy to use, or try to find it in the software. You can just say, hey Alexa, how many cards have been issued since the last clean, and it'll come back and say 250 cards have been issued, and say, okay, oh boy, we're going to run into an issue here. Let's make sure we clean the printer, and then we keep going with it. So you see that, and then of course we kind of talked about it earlier, but really that seamless experience across devices. So that's something that's really critical in any software you use, right? You want to have that same experience whether you're on your phone, your tablet, or even at using your PC. I mean, you want to be able to shift across it, and for example, with your mobile phone, if you're out there and you're enrolling students and you send a print job back to the printer in the card office, you don't have to go back and update the system when you get back there. You just want to have that updated, the cards printed out, and it know that's been issued to that student. So really kind of driving those three things is going to drive that intelligent experience in the future. And then of course adaptable. This is something that's really important. I know we've talked to a lot of people on the IT side, as well as you guys in the card administrator office, but really kind of having what we call that agnostic solution. So it's not really tied to what you're using for the type of smart card or the reader that you have or physical access control system, whatever databases you're using. We don't really care like for the mobile operating system, whether it's Apple or Android or Windows. You need something that's going to work across all these. So you can pick the solution that works best for you. And then you just plug this ID issuance system into it. So not only being agnostic, but also flexible. So you can design a system based on your need and what the budget is. So you can add modules over time. You can add things like lamination if you want to later on to add more durability to your program. It also gives you the flexibility to issue not only a physical ID, but also a mobile ID. So really kind of having that adaptable ID issuance is going to be big in the future. So lastly, okay, so yeah, this is a lot of cool stuff, and you can put it out there and say, okay, great, but what does that really mean to you? What are the benefits you get from this, and why should you care about it in the future? It's really going to help out, and it's really going to take that friction and those pain points you've seen before, right? Like there's going to be less time setting up the system, training employees, issuing IDs, managing the system if you run into an issue. That's a lot of time spent on this thing that could be spent better in other ways, whether it's issuing IDs or supporting your other departments. So some of the additional benefits you get from that, when you get this set up, and like we talked about it before, it's going to be easier to bust lines. So whether you do the online photo submission or you can do mobile enrollment, right? That's going to give you ways to do that. To bust lines, as well as make sure you're getting those IDs all set up before they even come to campus, or you can send it to them. With cloud software, you got that flexibility to scale up and down as needed, with the software. So you're no longer tied to making that big investment and kind of that guessing game of, okay, do I have enough users and hardware and capability to run this? With cloud, you're able to scale up or down as needed, based on demand. And then, like I was saying earlier, it's a lot easier to deploy stations across the campus, right? Whether you want to take the printer and a tablet and phone, or you just want to do the enrollment and take a tablet or a phone and set up different stations. It's a lot easier to do that. So it's just a lot of benefits that come to you that'll be there in the future that I think is going to make life easier for you, so you can concentrate on the things that are important to you. So now I'll turn it over to Mike Galler. I've done a lot of talking here, and you guys have probably heard enough from me. So I'll just put my sunglasses back on, and I'll let Mike take over from here.
All right, thank you, Martin. And I have a couple monitors in this little situation, so I'll be looking back and forth just to kind of keep track. You can pretend that I'm looking across the audience like I would in real life, though. That'll make it more of a seamless experience for you. So to start out, we are going to go over a use case. And this picture might look fairly familiar to you, either from a presentation or frankly, real life. So we've talked, or Martin's talked quite a bit about new technology, but what are its benefits? First, again, we're going to start with hopefully, or maybe not, a familiar picture. This is what we picture as the old traditional ID issuance setup. As can be seen from that diagram above, the station is tethered or tied to the issuance software. So what are some of the downsides for this? I'll go through them in order. The first would be the poor user experience. With a sequential wired system, your issuance stations are physically tied to a location. And further, as IT problems occur, and we know that they likely will at some point, if any step in that system, whether that be the camera, the printer, or the computer, if any of those malfunction, the whole station shuts down. And if we think back to maybe a high school or undergrad operations class, we know that the slowest process in that system is going to dictate its overall speed. So along with poor user experience, it's also not scalable. As your school grows and changes, and we can tell from the comments that it very clearly is, keeping track of individual computers with varying editions of software just becomes a headache. You have different designs, you have different databases that need to be synced. And you're running the same type. Are all of these running the same version? I even saw in the chat box that students might have 5 to 10 different apps. It's expensive to deploy all of these, and it is a headache to manage. And then lastly, just the dated local software. These are the heavy installs, the limited number of installs, and the IT nightmares that we are all so accustomed to now. And that's not to mention any of those, tricky license dongles that seem to always be lost or stolen or misplaced. So all that to say is that we picture this as the old version of ID issuance. So enough with all the issues. Why move to non-local software? As can be seen from the picture here, printing and enrolling can take place anywhere across your campus, not tied to a physical desk. And without those local downloads, there are more users that can take advantage of this network, boosting your efficiency. So whether your deployment is small, like the first illustration, or large, like the illustration now on the screen, non-local software provides many benefits. And these are going to kind of be the antithesis of the first screen that we were on. The first would be that they're scalable. One single network license can handle your whole enterprise. That maintains consistency across your stations, simplifies the management for all the different administrators, and provides printing, again, flexibility from anywhere. Mobile enrollment. You don't need any local downloads, and that means you don't need to invest in any more IT infrastructure to enroll end users. You can use any computer, any tablet, or any mobile phone. Frankly, the one that you might have on your desk, in your pocket, or in your purse right now. And then lastly, cut the cord. We live in a mobile world, so why should we be confined to a desk simply for ID issuance? We aren't confined to a desk for anything else. Frankly, look at where we are right now, all sharing this over the internet. So cordless issuance, again, embraces the way that you are already doing business. An example that I like to use is network document printing. So maybe a decade ago, maybe even 15 years ago, everyone in an office would have their own document printer right at their desk. And it seemed great, right? Everyone has control over that piece of hardware. Anytime they want to print something, it can be printed, 1 foot away from them. But what did that lead to? It led to, if any of those printers, maybe you have 100 throughout your company, if any of those break, IT needs to go and source each and every one of them. You need to make sure that the ink in all of those is filled, the paper in all of those is filled. And so a decade ago or more, we moved all of those individual desktop network printers to one single network printer. So now we have 25 people all sending jobs to one single printer. It's easy for IT to manage, easier for the administrators to manage, and again, it's easier to keep track of the paper or the ink that you have. We truly believe that that exact same evolution is happening right now in ID issuance as well, along kind of similar to network printing. So all of these features and benefits, and we've been talking about not only what we see in the future, but what we also see right now. All of that would actually be for nothing if it could not be accessed securely. So when you are choosing your ID provider, you need to ensure that not only do you have those world-class features, but you can also rest assured that that ID solution was designed with security in mind. Again, all the way from the design to the implementation of that solution. So to start off, to try to get everyone's attention with our security presentation, and I unfortunately have no glasses. Instead, I have this picture, and some of you might have seen it already, so I apologize. And if you have, maybe keep it to yourself. But in this picture of this wonderful saltwater aquarium, can you spot the security risk? I'll try to look at the chat, maybe give you guys 10, 15 seconds. What do you think would be the security risk in this photo? Some of those fish look a little suspect. Who knows? I had one person say that maybe there was a reflection off of the glass that was somehow a security risk. I can tell you that that is not it. Well, now I just need at least one person to write something. Like it just feels like a rite of passage. There we go. The sunglasses. There, exactly. It's kind of like poker, it's the reflection again. Well, technology at times can be a double-edged sword. What is convenient and easy and intelligent, like we just talked about on the one end, can be an IT vulnerability on the other. The security breach in this photo actually happened through the IoT aquarium thermometer. From this unsecure device, so this is an IoT device that was not secured properly, hackers were able to infiltrate the MGM Grand network and steal precious data from their systems, putting both obviously all of their patrons and their profits at risk. And think about it, right? When they put it in, they probably thought this will be awesome. We probably have multiple different aquariums. We can set all the different temperatures because different fish need different temperatures. It'll be easy. And they didn't think about the underpinning of security that's needed for all those awesome features we see on commercials. Now, the first thing that you might be thinking, and this is often what people think and talk to me about, is, well, of course, hackers are trying to rob a casino. I mean, it's a casino. There's like, Oceans 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever they're on now about that exact thing. But I'm safe as a university. And unfortunately, contrary to what the movies might depict, personal information can be as valuable as that bank vault full of gold that you're picturing in your head. Just within 2019, here are some of the examples of higher education hacks, with new attempts happening every day. And unfortunately, with something like security, once a breach has happened, it's very difficult to recoup that information and the trust that is lost. Once Pandora's box is open, there's really no way of putting it back in. So enough with all the problems that I'm listing off. What are these solutions? Well, Martin mentioned that the future of IDs will be issued across form factors. Does your ID provider do both? Tactically, what are some examples of physical identity and digital identity so that we can maintain our security? Well, physical identity is probably what many of you are accustomed with, at least the first couple on the screen there. It'd be identity and access card issuance, but also financial cards like debit cards, credit cards. There's a lot of security obviously that are underpinning those. Passports, national IDs, driver's licenses. And then on the digital side, Entrust Datacard also kind of spans all of these, and we have multi-factor authentication. So a lot of times you'll see, pushes to your phone. That'd be an example of that. Digital certificates, SSL, PKI solutions. All of that really together, again, from design all the way to implementation, is important to underpin those features. Otherwise, the features, frankly, can be a bit of a vulnerability. Now, where some companies may duct tape together these physical and digital identities, it can prove advantageous to source your solution from a single company that, again, has designed those components to work together seamlessly. Now, let's get down to some of the details. I think that can be high level and a little abstract. We've talked again about how security at a high level is an imperative, but what makes IDs different? Here are a few different types of features that we have at Entrust Datacard. Well, the first one would be non-local software. Again, whether that be on-prem or in the cloud, non-local software secures access and maintains up-to-date and consistent licenses. Again, we don't just do physical, but we also do digital. Authentication safeguards access and should be embedded within your ID solutions. 3, we have field-based access, because not all access should be the same. With field-based access, you can verify who has access to what with the click of a mouse. 4, now again, we've talked about how some printers might be kind of MacGyvered to work in the cloud and to be IoT printers. With ours, they are truly IoT printers, and you can use a Windows driver to connect to that printer instead of you can use an API to connect to that printer instead of a Windows driver. And then lastly, with software, with our software, you can manage not only your devices, but also their firmware, their certificates, status, and supplies, that they're secure today and into the future. All right, so now what about the printer itself, and that we can actually physically see? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I happen to have a slide on it. Again, as I mentioned, from development to implementation, security should be at the heart of everything that we are doing within our printers. The first one I'll talk about is Secure Printer Startup. And this is software that will prevent unauthorized access to a printer, whether that be malware or maybe other threats, by locking down the access to that printer's functionality. The second one I'm talking about is Printer Locks. Now, this is not quite as high tech as the other ones that I've mentioned, but as an analogy, there are often many people that have a home security system, and they have scanners and sirens and cameras and all kinds of things in that home security system. But I'd be willing to bet that anyone that has a home security system is still locking their front door. And printer locks, very similar kind of situation, where that is then going to control access to the cards and the supplies within. Third, smart cards. Smart cards provide top-tier security for your IDs. To ensure that they're protected, no matter what technology your organization employs, choose an ID provider, again, that is agnostic to security technology like smart cards. That way you're not locked into a single type of smart card and have to change your entire university's way of doing their IT infrastructure every time you change an ID provider. And tactile impression. This is coded on the card itself. Tactile impression, which is kind of a raised stamp on the card's top plastic. This prevents fraudulent replications. And although my portion of this presentation is about security, I would say it also has kind of some branding benefits as well. Supplies like holographics, laminates, overlays, and UV coating protect your IDs today and into the future. Very, very difficult to replicate across a variety of different conditions. And then we've talked about this a couple of times, but to make your printers truly IoT devices, you have to make sure that they are encrypted with SSL and TLS certs, and that those are stored and managed within HSMs, or hardware security modules, within the printer itself. To again, make this a truly IoT device, not that thermometer in the corner of the aquarium. All right, so I know that it can be tough to get excited about security. Frankly, right at security, I drew the short end of the straw when it came to the presentation. But I thought I'd relate it back to something that we all are fairly familiar with. Now, I have been in a car thousands of times, tens of thousands of times. Actually, frankly, I've lost track. It might be a couple more. But in all but one of those rides, I have never needed a seatbelt. But we all still buckle up for that one. For me, that one was riding to my first ever high school football practice. I was nervous, excited, slightly groggy as we drove to the early morning practice. And it was like any other morning until it wasn't. Off in the distance, I see a car hit a barrier, balance on two wheels on the very edge of a bridge. The driver, who had actually fallen asleep after a nursing night shift, overcorrected and flew across the median, hitting us head on at 60 miles an hour. One of the first times that I had driven by myself, so a bit of a shock. And we were lucky. No one was seriously hurt, but imagine if we weren't wearing our seatbelts. Like a seatbelt, secure, and you can see at the top of the screen, security is always excessive until it's not enough. And frankly, if an MGM Grand could think back to a decision they might have been able to make a little bit before all that happened, just think of the importance. And so I think that it is a good sign of leadership to diagnose a problem like security before it becomes that emergency. So Martin, I will hand it back off to you.
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, you did a great job talking about security there, but just to kind of summarize our presentation for you guys today, we recognize, the higher ed market's evolving. There's a lot of things, without your control that's happening, as well as just kind of those traditional issues that you're seeing. We're seeing those market trends really, they're forcing rapid change to this whole, kind of identity issuance that, we've been so used to for last, how many ever years you want to say, probably since I started going to college, which was a long time ago, and I really don't want to give out my age here, but now we're seeing, we've been issuing cards, we've seen that evolution from, Magstripe to Prox, the smart cards. Now we're seeing mobile IDs, and now I think we're just seeing really an acceleration to what's happening with mobile IDs, remote enrollments, cloud software. All that stuff is kind of hitting us like a tidal wave. And then you couple that with the future of identity issuance and how it's going to work, right? It's going to be easy to use. It's going to be intelligent. It's going to be adaptable. And then like what Mike was saying, like you really need that underpinning of security to have that all work for you, whether you're doing cloud software, you're issuing mobile IDs, you're issuing physical IDs, doing all those things that make it intelligent and adaptable. You really need to have that kind of security framework and structure to make it all work. Otherwise, it just kind of falls apart at the end, right? And what I'll say with like the future of identity issuance is That's going to be available this fall, so you'll see more coming on that. I wish I could give you more details, and I was planning on it, but things have changed from a timing perspective. But I just wanted to let you know what's happening there. So the good news is we got plenty of time left here. We didn't want to talk for a complete hour and not leave time for questions. We wanted to hit the high points, kind of hit things that are relevant, and then also just open it up to see what kind of questions you have for us. And then we've also, this will be recorded. You'll have the presentation. Wanted to leave our contact information for you guys. I mean, it's funny, now that I've been at Entrust Datacard a couple of years, I see some familiar faces and names, on the session here. So if you don't think of something here or something comes up later, like, oh, I wish I would have asked Martin or Mike about this, feel free to go ahead and send us a question, and we'd be able to, answer it for you, whether it's, one of those issues facing you, one of those market trends out there, kind of where we see it going in the future, or even, security stuff. I mean, that's something that a lot of people haven't thought about previously. And that's really important to make sure you got a secure architecture as you're, looking at your program now as well as into the future. So with that, like I said, if you guys have any questions, just submit them in the chat. While Mike and I are on the call here, we're definitely hang out for a little bit and answer anything that, comes to mind. But we're really excited to, be here today. We can definitely provide you those security features, a little more detail on that. We got a question that came up: is there attestation documents regarding the security features that you can provide to IT? We kind of have that in different formats right now. So what we can do is put in something that's easy to consume and easy for you guys to be able to provide to your IT folks, because we know that is, who you're going to be working with on something like that. So that's a good question, Deb, and we can definitely provide that for you guys. So we got another question that has come up. Do students care that they have 5 or 10 different apps that do different things on campus? That's a really good question. The short answer is it depends, and I know that's not a great answer, but they're going to want to use the ones that are most relevant to them, and the things that are going to be applicable to them. So, minimizing the number of apps that they need to use is always going to be helpful. But I know as far as, using the app, if they are working in the card office, it's going to be, very easy for them to use. If they want a mobile ID, I know students are really excited about that, having that on the phone. But you're right, that's part of a bigger kind of question that I think university needs to address, that, if there's a lot of different apps and solutions out there from a mobile perspective, making sure that you have an overall kind of mobile first strategy, so you understand what they use and what's relevant. And not just putting a mobile app out there to use a mobile app or different application. Another question that's come in while we've been on the call here: can your card production software run as standalone to produce ID cards? This includes reading and encoding the cards. So yes, we can actually encode the cards as well. We do have that. We've talked about it previously. We didn't get into it today, but we actually have smart card capabilities. So you can encode the card after you print it. And that's one of the benefits of working with us, or frankly, probably all of our competitors from what you can see. So you shouldn't have to do the reading and encoding separately. We all have that within the printer itself. That just makes it a lot easier process for you. So you don't have to have that two-step process of printing the card and then going out and encoding the card afterwards, because we know that can be laborious. So we have a question that has come in. We have a number of CD800 card printers, and we'd like to convert some to print NFC cards. Please advise how to. That's actually a really great question. Sorry, I'm getting emails here. I'm trying to get out of my way so I can focus on this. We don't have the ability to do that right now with the NFC encoding, but that's something, like a lot of things that we are looking to enhance in the future. And we're always looking at our product roadmap to add additional capabilities to be able to do that. So got another question that's come in that's really good. What's the ability of the printers to encode information in the data section of smart chips as part of the printing process? So there is the the ability to do that with our TrueCredential product that we have available on premise today. It just depends on what type of cards you're using and the capability that's available for that specific type of card. So that's something that we could kind of get to offline to kind of get in the details of that. But we do have a chart that kind of shows you which which protocols we support with which type of smart cards. Okay, let's see. We have another question that's come in, really good one. Any plans to incorporate biometrics in the issuance process in TrueCredential? Thank you for that question. That's another good one, and we're seeing more and more uses of biometrics out there, right? I know there's a local university here in Minnesota that uses biometrics for access to their dining hall. As another conference where the football team is using biometrics to allow students or allow athletes into stadiums because they don't want them bringing in any devices or anything like that. So we're seeing more and more adoption of biometrics, and specifically to the questions about issuing that, bring that into the issuance process in TrueCredential. Again, that's something we're always looking at with our product roadmap and how we can enhance our product and bring more value to it. So we're always looking to incorporate things like that in the future. So just like anything, as those things kind of come to light in our product, we'll make sure to bring it out to the market. But that's that's another big thing that we're looking at. So when that solution is ready, we'll bring it out and be able to introduce it to everybody. Question has come up about, does the Alexa also give info on how many cards are left before ribbon or laminate run out and help with good info when working through error codes? Well, there'll be basic commands, like I said, that'll be available. So it should be able to provide how many cards are left before the next cleaning would need to be issued for the device. In the error codes, not sure if there will be error code integration initially with something like that, but I think you'll see more and more capabilities with Alexa type of voice interaction with the printer once the product gets out into the marketplace. But there's other ways that you can address error codes and things that are happening. Having a tool right on your mobile device to be able to say, okay, I'm running into an issue here. How do I resolve it? Let me pull up a how-to video. Let me click on a link. There'll be multiple ways that'll make it easy to kind of manage your printer, not only with Alexa, but also with different tools that you'll be able to use, like on your mobile phone or your PC. So good questions. You guys are great. That's why I like coming to these shows and working with you guys. You guys are always like 2 steps ahead of me. So let us know if there's additional questions you want us to answer. I think you're asking all the right stuff, and I think we're excited about what's coming out in the fall with the future of identity issuance, and also as we look at our kind of product roadmap and our ecosystem to see how we can add more value to the product and the solution that we bring to you guys in the higher ed space. So I think you'll continue to see this evolve with us. We want to make sure that we're making those right strategic decisions, and also addressing those pain points that you guys have, and with a solution that's going to address that. So we feel confident that we'll do that over time with our product roadmap.
Any last questions before we wrap up here today? Well, Martin and Mike, thank you for the informative presentation. Martin, I particularly want to make sure that you are wearing SPF sunscreen before you're standing out. Future is bright, and just want to make sure not just sunglasses, but you're wearing some sunscreen as well.
Absolutely. Just like I tell my son, safety first. And so I always put sunscreen on before he goes outside. And I made sure to do the same thing before presenting today. So
Awesome.
Thanks to NACU and for everybody attending today. Hopefully you had a lot of fun and learned a little bit. And, we'll continue to work with you guys and look forward to, helping you out. Thank you.
Thank you to all our viewers for your attention. Our scheduled virtual events is posted online. Please check out our website at www.naccu.org. Special thanks to our showcase presenters, Martin Hoff and Mike Galler of Entrust Datacard. I'm John Ogle with NACU. Enjoy your day.